Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're going to read from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Canto 9, Celestial Dynasties, Chapter number 7, King Harischandra. Mukham karoti vachalam, pangum langhayate girim yat kripatamam vande Shri Gurum Deen Tarinam Paramanantamatvam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hari Om Tat Sat. Chapter 7, King Harischandra. Pray tell me about Mandhata's descendants, said Parikshit. Shukadev said, Ambarish was the most prominent of Mandhata's sons. His grandfather Yuvanshava adopted him as his son. Ambarish's son was Yuvanshava and his son was Harita. Ambarish, Yuvanshava and Harita were among the outstanding members of the Mandhata dynasty. Another of Mandhata's son, Purukutsa, married the Naga princess Narmada and went with her to Rasatal, where, being empowered by Lord Vishnu, he killed many Gandharvas who had invaded the Nagas' lands. The Naga king Vasuki blessed Purukutsa that anyone who remembered how he was brought to Rasatal would be assured safety from snakes. Shukadev then mentioned the names of 5 generations of kings descending from Purukutsa until he came to the 6th generation, King Satyavrata, who was widely known as Trishanku. That's an unusual name. Shanku means nail. Why was he known as 3 nails? Because he had 3 faults which caused him pain like 3 nails. Oh yes, I vaguely remember hearing this history, said Parikshit. Very likely his father cursed him to become an untouchable because he kidnapped a Brahmin's daughter on her wedding day. You may have also heard that later sage Vishwamitra performed a sacrifice to send him bodily to heaven. The gods resisted and he fell back down, but Vishwamitra used his yogic power to arrest his fall. It is said that he can still be seen hanging upside down in the sky. Yes, I remember now. Please continue telling me about the dynasty. The Shanku's son was Harischandra. The sages Vishwamitra and Vashishta fought for many years because Vashishta was upset by how badly Vishwamitra treated Harischandra. As a result of their enmity, both sages were transformed into birds. I am familiar with the history of enmity between Vishwamitra and Vashishta, but I know little about Harischandra. Listen and I will tell you. Sage Narad Harischandra exclaimed, Your presence blesses us. The king offered Narad his throne, bathed his feet, and respectfully offered him refreshment. Pleased with his reception, Narad asked Harischandra if all was well in his kingdom. My dear sage, replied Harischandra, by the gods' blessings all is well with the kingdom. But he lowered his head and remained silent. But what? Said Narad. Great sage, I have no son, and this troubles me. I have sacrificed to all the chief gods, Brahma, Shiva, Durga, Nidra, but I still have no son despite my efforts. Narad smiled. The king was pious, but unfortunately he was too attached to worshipping the gods. Varun bestows sons, he said, and then departed. Harishchandra immediately arranged a sacrifice to petition Varun for a son. Pleased with his worship and offerings, the god appeared. Harishchandra bowed before him, saying, O powerful god, I desire a son. If you would be kind enough to grant my request, I promise to perform a great sacrifice for your pleasure with that son. So be it, said Varun, and then he vanished. Shortly afterwards, Harishchandra's queen bore a son, whom he named Rohita. On the night of Rohita's birth, Varuna came to Harishchandra in a dream and said, Now you have a son. You must offer the child to me by your promise. Harishchandra awoke suddenly and sat up, a look of horror on his face. Offer the child to Varun? Is that what the god wants? The king had fully intended to offer sacrifice with his son, but not to sacrifice the boy himself. What was he to do? Varun appeared before him in a vision. Well, king, what is your answer? Thinking quickly, Harishchandra said, It is not until 10 days after an animal's birth that it becomes fit to be sacrificed. Varun agreed and disappeared. After 10 days, the god again appeared to Harishchandra and asked him to sacrifice his son. Again, Harishchandra deferred the sacrifice on the plea that the sacrificial animal would only be pure enough to offer when he grows teeth. Thus it went on. Varun asked for the sacrifice, and Harischandra, out of affection for his son, deferred on various pretexts. Varun waited patiently until Rohita became a grown man. At that time, Rohita was informed that he was destined to be sacrificed to Varun, and thus he armed himself and fled to the forest. While hiding, he overheard the people ask about his father Harischandra. Having agreed that God Varun, our king, is suffering from dropsy, said one man. His companion replied, I am told that his abdomen has grown very large and he is in great pain. On hearing this exchange, Rohit became distressed and decided to return home. As he made his way back, he was intercepted by an effulgent Brahmin who said, Do not return now, Rohita. You will do more for your father and the citizens by staying alive than allowing yourself to be offered as a human sacrifice. You should make a pilgrimage to holy places to increase your piety and good fortune. In obedience to the Brahmin's instructions, Rohita travelled for 1 year, at the end of which time he decided to return home. After that, however, the effulgent Brahmin again came to him and forbade him to do so. Repeating the same words as previously, this happened for 5 years consecutively. During the 6th year, Rohita had an idea. He would secure someone to take his place and give him to his father to offer to Varun. Wandering from village to village, he repeatedly inquired if anyone was willing to sell one of their sons. One day he encountered an indigent Brahmin named Ajigartha, who agreed to sell his middle son, Shunashefa. Unaware of his fate, Shunashefa accompanied Rohita back to the capital. Entering the king's inner chamber, Rohita found his father bedridden and barely conscious. With tears in his eyes, he said, Father, it is I, Rohita. Harischandra opened his eyes with difficulty. My son, why have you returned? Now I am duty-bound to sacrifice you. Father, just outside this room waits a man I purchased. You can offer him to Varun in my place. Harischandra nodded in agreement, and then summoning his ministers and Vashishta, instructed them to perform a grand sacrifice to Varun. Shukadev added, once the sacrifice was completed, Harishchandra's dropsy was cured. Parikshit said, who was the effulgent Brahmin who repeatedly advised Rohita not to return home? Lord Indra in disguise. Who were the priests in Varun's human sacrifice? Vishwamitra was the chief priest responsible for offering the oblations. Jamdagni, who was perfectly self-realized, chanted the mantras from the Yajurveda. Vashisht was the chief Brahminical priest, and sage Agastya recited the hymns of the Samved. At the end of the sacrifice, King Indra, very affectionate to Harishchandra, presented him with the gold chariot. Please tell me more about Shunashefa. I will speak more about him soon when describing Vishwamitra's sons. You mentioned that Vishwamitra mistreated Harishchandra. How was that resolved? Vishwamitra eventually recognized that both Harishchandra and his wife were truthful, forbearing, and sincerely desired to attain spiritual perfection. Thus he instructed them how to succeed. I am curious to know that he taught them. Harishchandra learned the yogic process of purifying the mind by merging it with the earth, water, and with the earth with water, water with fire, fire with air with ether, ether with the total material energy known as Mahatattva, and Mahatattva with the spiritual reality. This is the mystic yogi's method of attaining self-realization. Harishchandra applied this process to achieve the Lord's service and thus realize his spiritual nature, filled with imperishable and inconceivable bliss without any trace of material influence. There was a loud furor among the sages in Naimisharanya. One exclaimed, our mission is to help the people in Kali Yuga. How will it help them to hear about human sacrifice? My thoughts exactly, said another. And why on earth did Narad misadvise Harishchandra? Did Lord Krishna not condemn the worship of the gods? Shaunak raised his arms to quieten everyone. My dear brothers, let us address our doubts to a revered speaker, Sutta Goswami. Sutta said, it is not unusual for Krishna to teach others through the example of his dear devotees. Consider Arjun's perplexity on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. One might question how a great devotee like Arjun could exhibit such ignorance, yet if he had not, Krishna would not have spoken Bhagavad-Gita for the benefit of humanity. The sages considered this quietly. Shaunak was the first to break the silence. After this horrendous experience, I don't think Harischandra ever again worshipped a god. Possibly this was Narad's aim. Others murmured in agreement. One said, furthermore, this history is more likely to put others off the worship of the gods than to attract them. Worshipping Krishna is much easier. So with this, we come to the end of this chapter, King Harischandra. Next time we will read from chapter 8, Sagar's sons offend Lord Kapila. Thank you for joining. Hariam Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.